What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And as always, we have ourselves a jam-packed show as we have a lot to get into, such as Ohio State taking down the #1 team, Penn State, last Tuesday. Who would have thought those gutty little Buckeyes had it in them? Did anyone have that on their bingo card? If you did, take a bow. Great job to those Buckeyes as they completed a 3-0 week last week. And how about Princeton taking down Loyola on Saturday? And how about Concordia Irvine taking down GCU? Did anyone have that on their bingo card? And BYU took down Pepperdine twice last week in MPSF play. Just what happened to the Waves? Did they crash and burn? And we have ourselves quite a number of NCAA men's volleyball matchups, which include UCLA versus GCU. And how about Coastal Carolina on the beach side of things, taking down number 14 FAU? I didn't even see that one coming. Plus, we have a new executive in terms of the AVCA. Who is this executive, dare you ask? You'll have to find out. So hand me a volleyball, set up the net, because I'm about to serve you up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday afternoon, Monday evening, Monday wherever you are listening from. Either way, thank you all for joining me for episode 187 of Set Point. And without any further delay, let us begin. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be where it's at without iSports Radio providing the live platform to go live on Spreaker. Please do follow them on Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok before it goes down at IE Sports Radio. And definitely do follow them on Facebook for those that still use it at IE Sports Radio. Or for those that want to know how to follow them on Facebook, just type in the word IE, then sports, then radio. Just like them and then follow them on Facebook. And then that's how you follow them on Facebook. We also have a website, www.isportsradio.com, and once you go there, you will see a Patreon link at the top, and once you click the link, donations will start at $5 a month once you start donating. This will get you a shot from all 27 of our shows, including this one, and higher tiers include IE Sports Radio merchandise, access to IESRU, the podcasting university of IE Sports Radio, and even a chance to be featured on a segment of our flagship show, The Defining Moment, with Larry B. Because for the past 8 years and counting, iSports Radio has been bringing you several different shows ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities, around the country. And we've been interviewing lots of people around the country, and we've been perfecting our craft to the best of our ability. All the while, we've been continuing to be by the fans and for the fans. And with your help, we are ready to take the next biggest step. And we're going on 9 years, going strong. So thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making iSports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. Shout out to our Patreon supporters, Bay Area Raised Apparel, Key to the Gate, Marcus Lostgreat, and a donor that wishes to remain anonymous. And with all that said and done, let us begin. So, first and foremost, we have a lot of NCAA men's volleyball to get into as, man, it was just a crazy week in NCAA men's volleyball. It was so crazy, I unfortunately could not get my NCAA men's volleyball matches to watch for finished, which is my weekly preview, which unfortunately I woke up late, and I'm still battling this little cough, and sadly I just messed up too many times when it came to my weekly video, and sadly I just couldn't get it done in time before the Ohio State-Penn State men's volleyball match went on, and I needed to go. I actually had plans later on that Tuesday, So sadly, I couldn't really pump out the video properly. I had to use iMovie and then just chop up my videos and then just put it all together via iMovie and then just put it out there, which wasn't really my best work, but there it was. But the first big upset we had last week in terms of NCAA men's volleyball was Ohio State versus Penn State. As before we continue, we gotta give a shout out to the chat room, such as Larry B and Arthur Parsons. Larry B says, "It's volley, y'all." Yes, it is volley, y'all. And Arthur Parsons says, "Let's go, Teran. Have a great show." Appreciate you, Arthur. Appreciate you two being in the live chat room on Spreaker. If you are listening live on Spreaker, it doesn't cost anything to make an account on Spreaker. You could interact with me on Spreaker, and if you can, that'd be awesome. But going back to Ohio State versus Penn State, so basically this was quite the interesting match. So Ohio State actually took the first set 25-21. They actually did not trail, and I'm thinking, could this possibly be the match for Ohio State? Because their last big-time win this season was against USC back in the Big Ten, the Big Ten Pac-12 Challenge. So Ohio State was in need of a big-time win, and unfortunately, they hadn't really gotten any big-time wins. They came close a few times against teams like Charleston, but to no avail, and then they came close against BYU, but to no avail. So Ohio State had been long yearning for a big-time win. But back to the match. Second set, Penn State took it 25-18. They had no problems in that second set. Then the third set, Penn State took it 25-22. That was probably the tightest set between the two teams, as there were 10 ties. And Penn State looked like they had reestablished their control over the match. By the way, this took place at Rec Hall, and this was round 2 between the two Big Ten schools. And yes, remember what what's his face, the Penn State coach said. I'm blanking on his name. Mark Pavlik said, even though Ohio State and Penn State aren't classified as Big Ten schools, they are Big Ten schools. So Mark Pavlik even said that these two teams are Big Ten schools, even though they are from the EIVA and the MIVA. Like, they are Big Ten schools, even though they aren't technically Big Ten schools. So, yeah. So the fourth set, it wasn't looking like it was going to be going 5, but then Ohio State really came to life late in the fourth set. And then everyone was thinking, are you thinking what I'm thinking? And then Ohio State forced that fifth set 25-21, and then they forced the fifth set. Then in set 5, Penn State led 8-5, and then I'm thinking, okay, it looks like Penn State might have this. But then Ohio State came to life. They tied it up at 13-13. Then they got to match point, and then they won it off of a walk-off service ace, and that was how Ohio State knocked off Penn State at Rec Hall, and they did what only one other team has done this season, and that was Long Beach State did. Beat Penn State at Penn State. So it was just an incredible win for Ohio State, and it's just, I don't think anyone really had that on their bingo card. To basically come back from, remember, Ohio State was coming off of a big win on Saturday against Ball State, where they had to reverse sweep their way to victory, and then they were coming off of 2 days rest, and they had to go on the road, which is it's never easy to beat Penn State at Rec Hall. So for them to do that is just incredible. This is definitely Ohio State's biggest win of the season, and to beat a very talented Penn State team, which is incredibly mature and has a really good coach, dare I add, is just amazing. So, and remember, Penn State was the number 1 team at the time. They were number 1 for one day, and they already lost. So, I'm sorry, I hate to bring that up, but it is the truth. Like, yesterday they were number 1, and this was their first full day as the number 1 team. And unfortunately for the Nittany Lions, they fell to the number 15 team. So, unfortunately for Penn State, that was basically how the Nittany Lions fell in 5 sets. So, Ohio State was led by Shane Wetzel. Yes, Shane Wetzel, the hero of the game. He came up big against Ball State, and now he came up big against Penn State. He had 15 kills to go along with a .286 hitting percentage. Jacob Pastor and Jack Stevens each had 12 kills. Cole Young had 8 kills. As a team, Ohio State hit .314, which is not bad, despite hitting 176 in that fifth set. Ohio State only missed 15 serves, which I thought was big. They outdug Penn State 32-27, and even though they only had 1.5 blocks, it was still a good night for Ohio State. And I thought only missing 15 serves was pretty big, even though they only had 6 serves or 6 service aces. And for me, the serving really came alive in that fifth set, and that was what truly mattered the most. And for Ohio State to basically come up big in that fifth set. And the fourth set was also big, where they hit 500 and only had 1 hitting error. That was huge right there. And for Ohio State to pick up that big of a win, it's really huge. I mean, they obviously had the 2 big wins in MIVA play, where they beat Lindenwood and Quincy. But this was probably the biggest win of the season, as the Ohio State picked up the biggest win of the season. And to beat number 1 Penn State, which is basically big brother to them in terms of like the Big Ten, is just quite amazing. On the road too. As for Penn State, they were led by Cal Fisher, as he had 19 kills. He hit 500 as he only had 2 hitting errors, which is quite impressive. Toby Ezeonu had 10 kills. Owen Rose and Brett Wildman each had 9 kills. Rose didn't even have a hitting error, which is quite nice. Michael Valenzi had 8 kills. Penn State hit .342, which is quite impressive. But they did miss 29 serves, which is not going to help you win a whole lot of matches. Cal Fisher had 5 aces, which is pretty good. Penn State only blocked the ball 6.5 times, so blocking wasn't really all that big. But you kind of see why Ohio State had a high hitting percentage of .314, which is why Penn State's blocking wasn't as big. So hence why both teams' blocking wasn't big and both teams had high hitting percentage. So overall for Penn State, it was just not the best win. It probably was the case of the Tuesdays, which is kind of the new Mondays. So obviously it is a thing to just get thrown off your game, where you obviously lose a Tuesday match, which you never really play on Tuesdays. You mostly play on like Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and then sometimes the rare Sunday match. But to lose on your home floor against the number 15 team in the nation after you are up 8-5 in set 5 is kind of But for Penn State, thankfully for them, it doesn't really hurt them in terms of the conference play, but it does hurt them in terms of the AVCA coaches poll. But that wasn't the only ranking, or the only upset. Oh no. There were other upsets. Also on Friday, we had Concordia Irvine upsetting Grand Canyon. So we also got to keep in mind one thing about Concordia Irvine. They did not have one conference win going into this match. They almost pulled off a conference win against BYU, but unfortunately they fell short, as Grand Canyon was top 5 in the nation, and everyone was hailing Grand Canyon, and they only had one loss going in, and that was to Pepperdine. And most people were hailing Grand Canyon as a possible national championship dark horse. But after this matchup, I think some people were kind of questioning their little hot takes. So the first set, Concordia won it 25-23. Second set was also the same, 25-23. Third set, despite not trailing, Grand Canyon won that third set 27-25. Then the fourth set, Grand Canyon really laid down the wood on Concordia. They won it 25-12. Then the fifth set, despite forcing a fifth set, Concordia wound up winning that fifth set 15-9. By the way, this was being played at Grand Canyon. This was played at the GCU Arena. I'm sure it was being played at the big gymnasium and not the little gymnasium, as Concordia pulled off its first win of the MPSF conference play, and they pulled off their first top 5 win since, I want to say, 2019, when they beat UC Irvine, which was number 5 at the time. So for Concordia Irvine to pull off that big of a win is quite impressive. Just because MPSF play has just been such an anomaly, and for them to pull off that big of a win, it's impressive on the road too. And I didn't even think that Concordia had it in them. I knew they were pushing teams like BYU, and heck, maybe they were going to take a set or try to give Concordia or give Grand Canyon all that they could handle, but I didn't think they would pull off this big of a win. I knew that they, in years past, they beat Grand Canyon, but for them to beat Grand Canyon on the road is just amazing. Concordia was led by Gage Doble, who had 22 kills, and he hit 600, and he only had one hitting error, which is incredible. On a night where Concordia needs someone other than Yuri Batista to step up, Gage Doble answered the call. Batista had 17 kills, and he hit 294, as Concordia as a team hit 396, and they hit 714 in that fifth set. That was just how incredible Concordia was. And they were incredible in the first three sets. They hit 550 in the first set. They hit 333 in set 2. They hit 455 in set 3. The only bad set that they had was in set 4 where they hit 91. That doesn't really win you a whole lot of sets. And the only negative Concordia had was the dig department, where they only had 23 digs. Normally, Riley Salmon, their head coach, told me that they're always going to outdig their opponents. That was not the case in this match. They got outdug 31-23. And the only real standout-ish stat that they had was kind of the part where they out-hit their opponent. But that was barely. Grand Canyon hit 395, which was incredible, but they had some guys. They had 4 players in double digits in terms of kills, as Camden Gianni led the way with 20 kills, Jackson Hickman had 15 kills, Rico Wardlow had 11 kills, Christian Janke had 10 kills. They missed 2 fewer service errors than Concordia, and they had one more ace than the Golden Eagles, and then Grand Canyon had a few more blocks than Concordia. They just fell a little bit short in that fifth set. So Grand Canyon just got off to such a little shaky start in the beginning. So the fact that Grand Canyon lost such 2 close sets is the big difference between winning and losing a match. I want to say, and I don't want to predict this, and I'm not guesstimating this, but I want to say maybe Grand Canyon looked too far ahead to next week or this week. Just because it's so easy to overlook Concordia, because they're the last place team in the MPSF, and then you're looking ahead to that first place matchup against UCLA. That's so easy to overlook, just because Concordia has come so close yet so far to winning an MPSF matchup, and then you're thinking, oh, we should beat Concordia easy. Nope. Concordia pulls the upset on your home floor just because you just could not win those first 2 sets just because you couldn't close them out. And then you were lucky to win that third set, and heaven forbid, you were leading the most of the way, and then if you don't pull the plug on their comeback, they could have swept you on your home floor. So I don't know what Grand Canyon was doing in the first 3 sets, but it's like, that's not what a number 5 team in the nation looks like. Grand Canyon did look a whole lot better in the second matchup, albeit that first set could have gone either way. But it's like, Grand Canyon has to play a whole lot better this week, because they do not look like a number 5 team in the nation. I think they look like a dark horse. There's a reason why people think this team looks like a dark horse. They do not look like a team that could beat Long Beach State or Penn State or UCLA or, heaven forbid, Hawaii. That does not look like a team that could go toe-to-toe with the 4 teams that I just mentioned. Grand Canyon is a decent team. They're a good team. I'll give them that much, and they deserve a lot of credit for winning 20 matches. However, do we really think that they can go toe-to-toe with the 4 teams that I just mentioned? Hawaii, UCLA, Long Beach State, or Penn State? I don't know. Just my opinion. But hey, they're going to get tested this week when they host UCLA this week. And that's basically my match and series of the week, like right there. I'll get into that a little bit later, but right now let's get on into the next MPSF matchup, which is Pepperdine versus BYU. This was my series of the week, match/series of the week, back in week 12. This was round 1 between the Waves and the Cougars, and I basically described this as the West Coast Conference match of the week, because in a perfect world, the two would be in the West Coast Conference. Unfortunately, there is no West Coast Conference because there is no San Diego, there is no St. Mary's, there is no Gonzaga, there is no San Francisco. You get the point. There is no West Coast Conference in men's volleyball. There's just these two, and that's it. Anyway, so the first set, Pepperdine. Oh no, this is round 2. This round 1 saw Pepperdine winning 25-21. Regardless, Pepperdine wound up winning the first set in both matches, 25-21. But just like in both matches, BYU wound up winning the second set 25-22. Except in round 1, they wound up winning it 25-22. The third set in round 1 of the match, Pepperdine wound up winning it 25-19. Then in the fourth set, BYU wound up taking it 25-20. And in set number 5, BYU was able to escape with that fifth set 15-11. I'll get into how the second round went. But for right now, BYU was able to take that fifth set. And I'm not too surprised by this win. BYU is so tough to beat at Smith Fieldhouse. Their fan base is just so crazy. There was 4,156. Now, it's not as crazy as the 5,000 that was in attendance for the Ohio State match. But honestly, it's so tough to win at BYU. Like, it really is. Like, I'm not overly surprised that BYU beat Pepperdine. Now, if BYU was the number 15 team in the nation and Pepperdine was like top 5, then I'd be a little surprised. A little bit more surprised to add. But BYU is just having such a great year, and the fact that people were saying that BYU was going to be picked second to last in the MPSF, but they are exceeding expectations and then some. And keep in mind, BYU has had to shuffle setters around just because they've had setters basically either get hurt, or they've had to have surgery and whatnot, or they've just had the setters not be available just because the best ability is availability, and they've had to like mix up setters every so often. As their setter tonight was Hughes, as he's back in the mix, as he had a double-double with 47 assists and 11 digs. Mix Romanis had 18 kills, while Luke Benson had 16 kills to go along with 11 digs, so he had his double-double. BYU had a hitting percentage of 283 compared to Pepperdine's 254. They did not keep Jalen Jasper in check. However, he was kind of the only hitter for Pepperdine. He had 37 kills. However, he had over half, hence the word half, of Pepperdine's kills. He had 37 kills out of Pepperdine's 60 overall. I will say this about Jalen Jasper. He's incredible, but it's like, you don't have any other players that could step up? Big yikes right there. As the second kill leader for Pepperdine was Jacob Steele and Joe DeLuzio, who both had 8 kills. Akin Akinwumi, who I thought was going to step up, had only 5 kills, so BYU must have done a good job of taking him out of the equation. That or Pepperdine was just hell-bent, excuse my French, on just basically just feeding him the ball every single time. Trey Cole had 16 digs, which I think is pretty good, as Pepperdine as a whole outdug BYU 47-37, which I think is pretty good. BYU outblocked Pepperdine 13-10, which is pretty good. Pepperdine had 0 service aces, and they missed 18 serves, while BYU only had 3 aces compared to 22 service errors. It's a big yikes if you don't have any aces. That must have really pulled the hair out of Jonathan Winder. That's gotta really sting, in my opinion. So now for round 2. So, like I just allotted to when it came to the first round, Pepperdine took the first set 25-22. Second set, BYU kind of mopped the floor in that in that second set with Pepperdine. They won it 25-16. Then the third set, unlike that first round, BYU won the third set 25-21. Then the fourth set, it was so back and forth. I was thinking, is Pepperdine going to force a fifth set just like last night? So they were up, I want to say they were up like 24-21 or something along those lines. I think it was like 23-20. And then it was 24-23, and I'm thinking, oh, BYU wants to end this in 4. And then Pepperdine forces a fifth set, and it's like, well, there it is. It's going to go 5, so all bets are off in set 5. But then BYU finishes it off in set 5 as they win it 15-13, as they win the series sweep, and that's incredible for BYU as they're having such a good year. A very good year, because remember, BYU was selected to finish second to last in the MPSF, and they're exceeding expectations and then some. So BYU had a better night in terms of offense, as they hit 314 as opposed to the previous night, as they were led by Romanis, who had 16 kills. He hit 353. Trent Mosier had 14 kills, while Capono Brown had 11 kills. Heath Hughes still led the offense as he had 46 assists, and this time BYU had a whopping as a team. Oh my goodness, they had 16.5 kills compared to Pepperdine's 11.5 block. Or I'm sorry, they had 16.5 blocks compared to Pepperdine's 11.5 blocks. My goodness, the only negative that BYU had behind Pepperdine was the digs, which Pepperdine outdug them 43-32, which Trey Cole led Pepperdine in that category. Or, I'm sorry, Joe DeLuzio led Pepperdine in that category with 11, while Bryce Dvorak had 10. So go along with his 41 assists. Trey Cole had 8 digs for Pepperdine, as BYU was led in the dig department courtesy of Mix Romanis. As for Pepperdine, they actually had a better, more balanced offensive diet, as Jalen Jasper only had 15 kills. Hence the word only, as he didn't have 37 unlike the previous night. Jacob Steele had 14 kills, while Joe DeLuzio and Anderson Fuller each had 10 kills. That's how you're going to win games. You're not going to win games if one of your players has over half the kills of your entire team. So, yeah. Better game plan, Pepperdine. Good job on that part. Like I said, Bryce Dvorak had 41 assists to go along with his 10 digs. Joe DeLuzio had 11 digs to go along with his 10 kills. As a team, Pepperdine hit 218 compared to BYU's 314, and they hit 0 in that fifth set, which isn't going to win you a whole lot of games. And they only had 5 aces compared to BYU's 8, though they missed 3 fewer serves compared to BYU. But still, Pepperdine, it's not overly surprising that they lost to BYU, as, again, it's so tough to win at Smith Fieldhouse in Provo. And Jalen Jasper had double-digit hitting errors, as BYU did a really good job of blocking the ball in this match. Like I said, when you're able to get a bunch of blocks in one match, as Tion Taylor had 9 in the match, it's quite astounding, as he had 9 block assists, but that's just 9 as well. So overall for BYU, they really protected home court well, and that's key getting those wins, just because now BYU is on the path of possibly avoiding UCLA in the MPSF tournament. If they can get to the path of avoiding UCLA in that MPSF tournament, then that is huge right there, just because there are 7 teams in the MPSF tournament, and if they can get like 3rd or heck 6th, then they will avoid UCLA up until the MPSF final. Because no one wants to see UCLA in the MPSF tournament. And heck, maybe, hence the word maybe, BYU can take down GCU. But we'll see what happens. So also on the upset train, we had on Saturday, we had Princeton taking down Loyola in some non-conference action. So Princeton, going into this matchup, did not have a ranked win. So I was really kind of hoping that Princeton would eventually get a ranked win. They'd been long yearning for a ranked win, and they eventually got it. As the first set, that kind of slipped away from them. They lost it 30-28. This was being played at George Mason as, excuse me a second. Sorry about that. This was being played at George Mason as George Mason was kind of like hosting a little mini tournament, as they hosted Princeton in EIVA action, and then they hosted Loyola, just because Loyola kind of want to see what the whole campus was in terms of the... Just because George Mason is hosting the NCAA men's volleyball tournament, and it looks like, hence the word looks like, on paper, Loyola is going to be winning the MIVA, or is one of the favorites to win the MIVA tournament. I'm not trying to speak that into existence just because anything can happen in the MIVA tournament, but it looks like, on paper, Loyola of Chicago could, hence the word could, be coming out of the MIVA. Now, back to this matchup between Princeton and Loyola. So Loyola won the first set 30-28, but then Princeton really rebounded in that second set. They laid down the wood, as they looked like last year's team that just beat Penn State. They won that second set 25-16. Then they won the third set in narrow fashion 25-23. Then the fourth set was very tight. It looked like Loyola was going to force a fifth set, but then Princeton was able to take it to a deuce game, and they eventually won that fourth set 31-29, and they eventually knocked off not only their first ranked opponent, but they knocked off a top 10 team. As Loyola, last week, they lost to Purdue Fort Wayne. Now this week they lost to Princeton, so I don't know what happened to those Ramblers, but it's like 2 losses to 2 unranked teams. But Princeton is a scrappy team. I'm just going to say this about Princeton. They're a whole lot better than that record shows, just because they've played some pretty tough opponents, like Penn State. They played Pepperdine. They played UCLA. So that record's a little misguiding for Princeton, as they're 10-10, but they've played some darn good opponents. They've played some stiff competition. As Princeton was led by Ben Harrington, who had 18 kills. Owen Mellon had 10 kills. As a team, Princeton only hit 212, but they outdug their opponent 38-34. And even though they got outblocked 15-6, they out-aced their opponent 10-6. And this was probably what really hurt Loyola. Loyola missed a whopping 30 serves. They had 30 service errors. OUCH. You cannot win a match by missing 30 serves. Ow. Princeton only missed 19, so I'm already cringing at the fact that I'm looking at that statistic. So I'm sorry, Loyola, but you can't win that match by only having 30 service errors. And you only had 6 service aces. Loyola was led by Cole Schlotthauer and Parker Van Buren, who each had 15 kills, while Jack Yentz had 9 kills. So overall for Loyola, the silver lining of this loss is that they got the bad loss out of the way, and thankfully Princeton's not in their conference. But it's like, you kind of shot yourself in the foot. And even though you did well in that third set, it's like, you kind of have to wonder, what just went wrong in that fourth set? But Princeton has been long yearning for a win like this. Like, they had a few good chances at some good wins against ranked opponents, but they just could not pull it out. So, for Princeton, I hope this is kind of the start of something good, just because I think next week they're playing Charleston, which is kind of the last ranked opponent on their schedule before they close out the rest of EIVA play, and then they've got the EIVA tournament. So we'll see if Princeton can possibly, hence the word possibly, take down the EIVA ladder and possibly make another EIVA run to the NCAA tournament. But for Loyola, I hope this is kind of the last bad loss they have, but we'll see what happens with them. So we'll see if Loyola has any more bad losses. They shouldn't have another bad loss on their schedule just because this week they have Lindenwood and Quincy. Their last remaining schedule is Ball State and I'm sorry. They don't. Wait. They've got Lindenwood and then they've got Purdue Fort Wayne, and then next week they've got Quincy and somebody else. Quincy and then I think Lindenwood, something along those lines. Either way, Loyola should not be having too many bad losses. Like they're getting so close to clinching that number 1 seed and hosting the MIVA tournament. So Loyola shouldn't have any more bad losses. So this week they have Lindenwood and Quincy. So yeah, they do have Lindenwood and Quincy. They've got Lindenwood and Quincy, and then the final week they have Ball State and then Ohio State. And then they've got the MIVA quarterfinals, and then they've got the semifinals. So the MIVA tournament does it so differently, unlike the MPSF tournament. The MPSF has one more week, and then the MIVA has the quarterfinals 1 week, and then the semifinals and final one more week. So I'm sorry to everyone that's getting mixed up. I'm very, very sorry. So for Loyola of Chicago, my bottom line is this. Just don't have another game like that again. Otherwise, that could cost you a possible spot in the NCAA tournament, or could cost you a spot in the Final Four entirely. But I'm still confident Loyola could possibly still be a dark horse. I'm just not as confident in them as I was previously. I just don't think that Loyola... I think they're a good team, and they've got good players, and John Hawks is a fantastic coach. I just don't know if they could keep up with the likes of Hawaii or UCLA or heck, Penn State. I mean, maybe UCLA just because John Hawks was an assistant coach there for John Speraw, but I don't know. We'll see. Alright, so that's it for all of the upsets that happened. I mean, I guess I wouldn't really call BYU over Pepperdine a true upset, but what can you do? So on Friday, I actually attended the Long Beach State USC matchup at the Pyramid, and I was a little late getting there just because I had a PA announce a high school boys volleyball match. I missed the first set. I'm just going to skip over the first 2 sets. I didn't really miss much of the first 2 sets. Long Beach State kind of beat USC like a drum in the first 2 sets. 25-17 and 25-15. Through the first 2 sets, USC was hitting in the negatives. And this is no knock on USC, as USC's got a fairly young team, and it was just not looking too hot for the Trojans. The third set, I think USC kind of caught their second wind, and they knew they did not want to get swept. And they were putting on they had some big boy plays in that third set. Dylan Klein had a block, which forced Long Beach State to call timeout. Kevin Coburn was making some big boy plays, and it was looking like Long Beach State was on their heels, but then Long Beach State did this thing called adjusting, and unfortunately they took the lead, but USC was doing this thing called fighting on, and they were battling, and even though USC didn't win the set, eventually Long Beach State wound up winning set 3, 25-23. USC kind of made Long Beach State sweat. I was thinking that Long Beach State was going to lose the set. I was really hoping that USC was going to force a fourth set. Like, USC was down, I want to say, like 22-18 or something like that. But eventually they clawed their way back, and they were even making me think, can USC really force a fourth set? And if they had a couple more years in their young guys, I think they force a fourth set. Unfortunately, I think being in a big-time facility like the Pyramid on the road is just a bit too much for their young guys. And against a lot of experienced guys like Spencer Olivier and Clark Godbold and Sotiris Shipanis, even though he's only a sophomore, and Aiden Knipe and Mason Briggs and Simon Torwey, it's just a little too much. And you got to remember, Long Beach State is 1 year removed from making the national championship. But the silver lining for USC is that this isn't a conference game. This is the biggest silver lining for both of these teams. This isn't a conference game. So, fortunately for USC and Long Beach State is that the two love to schedule one another midway through their conference schedule, and they like to basically give one another their final tune-up before the final stretch of their conference play. So I actually caught up with USC men's volleyball coach Jeff Nygaard because I haven't spoken with him in a while. It's been a while since I've spoken with Jeff Nygaard. I haven't spoken with him since the beginning of January when USC played Lindenwood. So I caught up with him and I talked with him following USC's loss to Long Beach State, and I talked with him about the positives of the loss to Long Beach State and why they schedule one another midway through conference play and what they needed to do in order to possibly beat Long Beach State in round 2 of Long Beach State versus USC.
Jeff Nygaard, the head coach of the USC men's volleyball team.
Hello, Jeff. Thank you for your time here. All right, Coach. Obviously, this was a tough loss, taking on the number 4 team in the nation. Despite the loss, what were some positives in tonight's match against Long Beach State?
I love seeing the connection that Nate had with Frasrand in the middle. I love seeing how they've built that relationship, and now we're actually running it from a lot of different creative spots, and we're having success with it. So it's great to see that piece fall into place for us. I thought Kevin Cobrain elevated his game quite a bit and was just taking some really nice big boy swings for us and putting the ball away in the way that we know that he's capable. So seeing a couple of those things, I thought our serving was pretty consistent. That's been something that we've been definitely putting some energies towards. So to see us actually get above 800 in the consistency department was a good step forward.
Now, that third set, you kind of put a little bit of pressure on them, and even when you were down, you actually put them on their heels, and you kind of made them sweat a little, and you almost clawed back and forced a deuce game. What can you say about that third set and how you made them sweat a little?
We fight on. And yeah, we can expand on that. It's the conversations that we're having is playing volleyball to play volleyball. What that means is that on our side of the net, making sure that the team is focused on not the score, not the refs, just executing at a high level, just being competitive every single point, focusing on each single point. And that's irrelevant of whether you're up by 5, down by 5. It's like each point deserves that level of intensity and focus and all that stuff. And in that game, we found quite a bit of success, and we did a lot of really good things. We put a lot of pressure on them, and it's something that we want to make sure that we are building on consistently. And we got another chance tomorrow to go in there and build off of that. So we'll take them on at home, and I expect it to be another good battle. I know they're going to be a consistent performing team. They got a lot of experience, and it's going to be a fun night of volleyball tomorrow.
Now, you scheduled this matchup against Long Beach State in the middle of conference play. Like, what does that mean for your team and their team, like, going into, like, the final stretch of MPSF and their final stretch of Big West Conference play? Yeah?
I don't really see it in the way of in a conference or not, even though you're absolutely on point. This is our last non-conference before we would match up against anybody in the NCAAs. We have to make a push to get that AQ. So this is our last opportunity to ramp up against an RPI opponent that we might see later down the road. And it's another chance for us to play a top-ranked team so that we can continue to close the gap and make sure that our guys are saying, okay, this is what that takes, this is what this feels like. So for us to come in here, it's a great environment for volleyball. Love coming down here and competing down here. It's just a great opportunity and environment for just volleyball. So our guys are gaining that experience, which is great.
And then Kevin had 11 kills, and Lucas obviously stepped his game up as well. What can you say about Kevin's night and Lucas's night?
Both of them are demonstrating leadership when it mattered. It's one of those things where those are both 4th years, 5th year. And in the huddle, they were leading the charge. They were leading the voices. And ordinarily, they're fairly quiet guys. But tonight, they were taking the team and putting it on their back. And those two guys were key for us. And when we needed kills, when we needed blocks, when we needed whatever we needed, those guys were the ones that constantly showed up and got something done for us. When we needed that big swing, throw it to Kevin. In fact, I was telling our setters, hey, we're looking for Kevin here if we can get him the ball, especially in a point scoring opportunity. And he was taking those swings and putting them away consistently. And so that's something that we know he can do, and we expect it from him, and he delivered.
And then you've got the double libero formula going on. Is that like a little bit of an experiment, or has that been like a science experiment going on throughout the entire season?
Well, that's been something we've been seeing in practice, is that the guy who's ordinarily with the second team gets to dig against the first team consistently, and he's putting a lot of balls in the air. So when we felt we needed a little bit more on the defensive side of that ball, we put a guy in there that's been showing us in practice a ton that he's ready for that opportunity. So put him out there, absolute confidence in his ability to put that ball in the air for us. I don't question for a second. In fact, I think he's the best free ball setter / if he takes that second ball, he's going to put it where we need it every single time. And he's been doing that for a long time. So absolute confidence is an ability to go out and contribute.
So that was my post-game interview with Jeff Nygaard, the men's volleyball coach at USC. So in the second round between Long Beach State and USC, Long Beach State did wind up winning that match in 4 sets, but it was rather tight. So the first set, Long Beach State drubbed USC in that first set, 25-13. But in the second set, USC pounded the daylight out of Long Beach State, winning it 25-16. There was a point where Long Beach State was down by 10. Yes, I'm not kidding you. To a team that was under 500, no offense to USC, of course. Like, USC is probably the best under 500 team in the nation. But USC was up by 10 against Long Beach State, and they wound up winning it 25-16. Then in the third set, it looked like it was if Long Beach State was going to win a close third set, but then I think they were up like 23-20, and then USC claws back to tie it at 23-all, and then eventually Long Beach State wins it 27-25 in a deuce game in set 3. And I think that was kind of the momentum swinger going into set 4, as Long Beach State takes that fourth set 25-21. But despite winning that match, USC displayed a lot of grit compared to that previous night, just because USC is such a young team. They've got quite a number of freshmen, considering you saw what happened the previous night. Like, if you compare the two, you see that USC looked like such a different team. Like, whatever Jeff Nygaard said following that loss definitely worked. Now, obviously, it's a whole different perspective being on your home floor at the Galen Center compared to being on the road at Long Beach State, where there's so many breathing Long Beach State fans breathing down your neck, heckling you, hoping that you miss your serve and whatnot. Whereas at the Galen Center, you're a little bit more loose, relaxed, and free. But for USC, I think they improved drastically in that second match against Long Beach State. And you can really see that the future is going to look so bright for the Trojans. So, help is on the way, USC. Your future is going to look bright, especially once you get Sterling Foley in the fold. And once you get Noah Roberts in the mix as well. Hopefully we can see him and Dylan Klein in the fold as well. Like, that's going to be a legendary trio right there. Foley, Klein, and Roberts. Like, that's going to be such a deadly trio. So, not to worry, USC fans. Hopefully we will get to see that trio in action for you all in the near future. So, we'll see what happens for USC. This week they've got BYU happening, but we'll see what they can do with their young team going forward. So that's that for all that what happened in Week 12 in NCAA men's volleyball. So let's head on over to the AVCA men's volleyball coaches poll for Week 13. So we'll start off with this week's coaches poll, 15 through 11. So 15 goes to CSUN at 15, Charleston at 14, Ohio State, which beat the number 1 team last week, at 13, Ball State at 12, and USC at 11. 10 through 6 consist of Loyola Chicago at 10, Stanford at 9, Pepperdine at 8, and BYU at 7. Yes, there is no number 16 because the number 5 team is actually a tie between Grand Canyon and UC Irvine. So 4 through 1 consists of Long Beach State at 4, Penn State at 3, UCLA at 2, and your new number 1 team in the AVCA National Collegiate Coaches Poll, aka the NCAA Men's Volleyball Coaches Poll, is Hawaii. Yes, after being removed from the number 1 spot of the AVCA National Collegiate Men's Volleyball Coaches Poll, Hawaii is back to being number 1. So, congratulations to Hawaii for their 2 wins over CSUN, which, in my opinion, is no surprise. Nothing against CSUN, but it's like, there was no doubt that Hawaii was going to get off the floor, beat Long Beach State. Well, okay, maybe not that surprising, but there was no doubt they weren't going to have a letdown against CSUN, even though it was at CSUN. So, for me, it was no surprise that Hawaii was going to be the new number 1. I was a little surprised to see Penn State go down 2 spots, but you lost to the number 15 team, so it's like, of course you're going to go down quite a bit. Now, what I am surprised is, why is Ohio State at number 13? You go 3-0, and you only go up 2 spots, considering, I understand Ball State has won more sets than Ohio State, but come on. And why is Stanford ahead of Loyola Chicago? Like, Stanford has been quite, I wouldn't say disappointing, but it's like, they've kind of underachieved compared to Loyola. Like, they've lost to CSUN twice, and you have the audacity to rank them ahead of Loyola? I mean, yes, Loyola has lost twice to they lost to Purdue and Princeton, but it's like, you have the audacity to rank them ahead of Stanford, rank them behind Stanford? Like, what the heck, dude? Like, Stanford has not really proven to me that they're a top 10 team. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. Or inside the top 10. Like, maybe Stanford is a number 10 team, but I think Ohio State should have been 10. Like, I don't know if you all know this, but I actually vote in the off-the-block media polls, and I actually voted Ohio State as number 10. I'm sorry, but they deserve to be ranked number 10. You all could probably hate me for that, but it is the truth. Ohio State deserves to be ranked number 10, and honestly, they deserve that number 10 ranked spot, and they earned that number 10 spot for this week. So until Stanford earns that number 10 spot, and they pull off some sort of upset, I don't want to hear anyone saying otherwise, just because Ohio State earned that number 10 spot, and honestly, that was a big-time win for them, and for Ohio State to only get 2 spots, while Stanford, who didn't even get to play at all last week, getting 1 spot just because Loyola wound up losing to Princeton is just beyond crap, if you ask me. So, it's just my opinion, and if y'all want to fun police me, you know where to find me on Twitter. I'm just saying. Anyway, BYU moved up in the coaches poll as they and Pepperdine swapped. Grand Canyon and UC Irvine are tied for number 5 just because, well, you lost to Concordia Irvine, so I don't have any sympathy for you, Grand Canyon. Sorry. But that's pretty much going to do it for the AVCA Men's Volleyball Coaches Polls. We're going to take ourselves a quick little breaky break. When we come back, we will go over Week 13's NCAA Men's Volleyball matches to watch for. Also, we're going to go over some NCAA Beach Volleyball matches to watch for, and we're going to go over some Beach Volleyball Pro Tournament matches that happened over the weekend, and we'll go over the new AVCA executive that was just recently named following Kathy DeBoer's soon-to-be departure. You're listening to Set Point here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
What is going on, everybody? My name is Harrison Glazer, and we're coming at you from the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. I cover the Jets, the Islanders, the Nets, and the Yankees.
This is Pierre Moss, and I cover the Mets, Knicks, Rangers, and the Giants.
Our show is live every Wednesday through Spreaker and a bunch of other ways to get our content. Again, we're the show that never sleeps podcast. We talk about all those New York sports. It's a lot of fun. We get into all of it. Please tune in. Again, that's Wednesdays at 6 p.m.
And we look forward to having you guys right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, ladies and sinners. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter, at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter. At any time, be happy to reply. Always want to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernick, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
With segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely do check out all of our amazing shows, such as The Show That Never Sleeps with Pierre Moss, Sin City Sports with Cale Henderson, and Chi-Town Weekly with Adam Karnick. Normally this would be the time where Teran Rodriguez, would be going live with Set Point, and Adam Karnick would be wrapping up with Chi-Town Weekly. But since Adam Karnick is on paternity leave, I am taking over the 5 p.m. spot while he is on paternity leave. Also, I would like to give a shout out to Adam Karnick, as he and his wife delivered a beautiful baby boy last Tuesday to be exact. So congratulations to Adam Karnick and his wife for delivering their beautiful baby boy, healthy, as they are all home and they are all doing well. So congratulations to the Karnick family, and I wish you well going forward. All right, let's get on into segment number 2 of Set Point, as we have our Week 13 matches to watch for, as we only have 3 more weeks left of the regular season until it's postseason tournament time. Well, 2 more weeks if you're the MIVA, and then you've got the MIVA tournament. So, Week 13 matches to watch for. And I kind of made a little bit of a mistake in terms of my matches to watch for. I honestly pre-recorded my matches to watch for and expect that to be released on early tomorrow, just because I got a lot of things to happen in tomorrow, but I digress. So, my matches to watch for in Week 13. So, starting off, I'm going to actually do this a little bit more unique. So, Friday, we have Damon at LIU. Yes, it's a Northeast Conference matchup. You didn't see that one coming just because, well, for starters, this is actually a first-place matchup between Damon and LIU. Yes, Long Island University. So, the first meeting saw Damon sweep LIU, but now this matchup takes place at Long Island University, and Long Island University now has Caden Satterfield back in the lineup. I heard that Caden Satterfield actually missed a couple of games, but now that he's back in the lineup, Long Island University should be better than ever. So look for quite the battle between the Wildcats and the Sharks. So it's sure to be a barn burner in this Northeast Conference matchup. Jumping back to Friday and Saturday's matchups, we have number 2 UCLA taking on number 5, or tied for number 5, Grand Canyon. Oh, this one's going to be a barn burner. This is probably the preview of the MPSF Championship. So for UCLA, they're ahead of the class in terms of the MPSF, while Grand Canyon is pretty much the second banana. Now, UCLA, it looks like if they win these two matches on Friday and on Saturday, by the way, this is going to be taking place at Grand Canyon, but I presume if UCLA wins these two matches, they clinch the number 1 seed in the MPSF tournament. That's because they're 2 games ahead of Grand Canyon. Don't quote me on that. That's probably something you got to ask Jonathan Bates, aka MPSF Bias, but I digress on that. But for UCLA, if they win these two matches, then they should be the number 1 seed, just because even if Grand Canyon wins out and then UCLA loses out, they should have the tiebreaker over Grand Canyon. But for UCLA, there's not a whole lot stopping the Bruins. Whereas Grand Canyon, they split their matchup against Concordia last week. And like I said in the first meeting against Concordia, Grand Canyon did not look like a championship contender in the first meeting against Concordia. They looked everything amongst the opposite. So Grand Canyon's got to play some darn good volleyball. They have to play like they have been prior to that first meeting against Concordia. I mean, in the loss against Pepperdine, that was unacceptable, obviously, but it's like Pepperdine was a decent team. For Grand Canyon against Concordia, they were taking on a team that hadn't won a conference game, and that was under 500, and they were at home. So I don't know what Grand Canyon was doing. I know the MPSF is really good. I mean, even Concordia is underrated as always, but it's like, for them to just not look like themselves in those first 3 sets, to them losing those losing those first 2 close sets, just bothered me. So they just can't look so out of it in those first 2 sets. They just can't look out of it against UCLA. Because if they look out of it against UCLA, they're going to get motor boated or boat raced against UCLA. I guarantee you that. So for Grand Canyon, they got to look really good against UCLA. For Grand Canyon to have any sort of chance of being that number 1 seed, they have to play really good volleyball. Like, they have to basically throw everything at UCLA. The kitchen sink, the washer and dryer, the toaster, the big screen TV, the couch, the recliner. They got to throw everything at UCLA. But if they do so, then they will knock off the Bruins. But not a whole lot of teams have really had the answer for UCLA. So we'll see what happens with the Bruins and the Lopes. But for me, the luxury for Grand Canyon is that both matches are going to be at Grand Canyon. So we'll see what happens with UCLA and Grand Canyon. Also on Friday and on Saturday, we have UC Irvine taking on CSUN, as the two will be playing at UC Irvine or the Bren Event Center on Friday, and then the two will be playing at CSUN on Saturday. So for UC Irvine, they are the only team in the Big West Conference that's undefeated in conference play. However, UC Irvine is going to be playing the remainder of their schedule against ranked teams. And it starts with the CSUN Matadors. Now, the Matadors aren't really the biggest and sexiest name in the Big West Conference, but the Matadors are vastly improved under the watchful eye of Theo Edwards. And Kyle Hobus, and I'm going to definitely say this, Kyle Hobus is an all-Big West first-teamer. Clip this, quote this, I guarantee you he is an all-Big West first-teamer. Kyle Hobus is all-Big West first-team material. And I honestly don't think this is going to be an easy series for UC Irvine. I really think that CSUN can possibly have the ability to make UC Irvine sweat. Now, UC Irvine obviously has a lot of weapons at their disposal. They have a lot of good serving. They've got lots of pin hitters at their disposal. And they're somewhat an underrated package. They're probably Grand Canyon except nearly complete. Except they really serve tough, and I really think that UC Irvine can basically, or they're sneaky good. They're almost as good as Grand Canyon, but just a sliver, not quite there yet. I think UC Irvine is quite entertaining. I think, to me, UC Irvine is Grand Canyon, but more entertaining to watch. For me, I just think UC Irvine just can't underestimate CSUN. And it's so easy to overlook CSUN just because next week, UC Irvine has to go to the Big Island to play Hawaii. And that is so huge right there just because Hawaii is that big boss. And if you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. And UC Irvine knows that. Just because UC Irvine knows that the Big West goes right through them and Long Beach State. But UC Irvine also knows that if they want to get through those two, they have to take down CSUN, which is kind of the gatekeeper. But UC Irvine also knows that they're amongst the top 10, but CSUN is not going to go down without a fight. And Theo Edwards, I have to give him his flowers. He's done an outstanding job for the Matadors. And like I said, Kyle Hobus is all Big West first team material. But that doesn't mean that UC Irvine is going to lie down. I really think that these Anteaters can go 2-0 this week. Is it going to be easy? Of course not. They're going to have to bring their best. And they can't just underestimate anybody and everybody. And they can't afford to go down 0-2 on the road. They can't afford to go down 0-2 in general just because CSUN does have that ability to basically make a team pay if you're down 0-2. Look at what they did to Stanford. Stanford went down 0-2, and then eventually CSUN slammed the door on them. And that eventually wound up costing the Cardinal. So for UC Irvine, the moral of the story is you just can't underestimate CSUN. CSUN has vastly improved, and you also can't just close off Kyle Hobus. You also got to watch out for Griffin Walters as well, just because he's kind of the left-hand man or right-hand man for Hobus. But overall for UC Irvine, they just got to serve tough, run their game, and just make sure they just don't look ahead. Because if they look ahead to next week, that's going to be so problematic. The ball's in their court, and they just got to take care of business this week. Then they can look ahead to next week. But that is that for that matchup. Also on Friday and on Saturday, we've got number 11 USC at number 7 BYU. Oh boy. So I could just basically just say BYU is probably just going to roll past USC, but that's boring. This matchup is important for BYU just because you want to avoid UCLA at all costs. If you are on the path of UCLA going into the MPSF tournament, like if you are the 4 or 5 seed, well, good luck trying to win the MPSF tournament. You will have to have that same balls of steel like Stanford did last season. For BYU, my recommendation is you pretty much want to be that 3-2-3. Well, I don't think they're going to be the 2 seed, just because they lost to GCU both times. I think the 3 seed is realistic for them. Like, I think they could be the 3 seed. And honestly, BYU is just having such a great season. They have to be the 3 seed. I could realistically see them as the 3 seed. Maybe they just cannot be that 4 seed. If they're the 4 seed, then they better hope they are at full strength against UCLA come semifinals time. I know I'm looking that far ahead to the MPSF tournament, but realistically, my crystal ball is telling me that BYU, if they're the 4 seed, could match up with UCLA, and that is a matchup problem for the Cougars. Against USC, however, they should not have too much trouble, just because USC going on the road to Smith Fieldhouse, that's going to be a problem. Because if they were really able to handle Long Beach State and the Pyramid, I don't know how they're going to handle Smith Fieldhouse. Smith Fieldhouse had like 4,000 on night number 1. I don't know how much they had on night number 2, but it's like, that's going to be trouble. They had 4,325 on night number 2. So, yeah, they had just a tad over 4,000 on both nights. So, for USC, expect about the range of 3,000, 4,000. So, I hope USC is able to bring its A game against the Cougars, just because BYU is on a tear, and honestly, there's not a whole lot stopping these Cougars, just because BYU is playing with a lot of Providence, I suppose, and they're playing really well. And again, everyone thought that BYU was not going to be as good as most people thought, but honestly, they've exceeded expectations and then some, and I really got to give it up to BYU. So, Larry B saying USC. I mean, I want to believe in USC. I really think USC can make BYU sweat. It's just that, can they do so on the road? If this was at the Galen Center, maybe I would be singing a different tune. By the way, this will be live streamed on BYU TV, so for those that do have access to the BYU TV app, you're in luck. So, definitely do get that. This will actually be on a Thursday and a Friday, which is, I guess I'm going to have to re-record then. So, oh well. We'll see. And then BYU, surprisingly, they actually have that's so weird. BYU actually has a bye after the USC match, and they've got Stanford following that. So, we'll see. Anyway, so that is that for the USC-BYU match. And then on Saturday, this is the last matchup to watch for. This one actually comes from the Conference of Carolinas. Erskine at North Greenville. Now, you're probably wondering, why is that a notable matchup, Teran? Well, this is actually the battle of 2 really good teams from the Conference of Carolinas. This is actually the battle of 2 top teams from the Conference of Carolinas. Well, they're both actually the 2 top teams from said conference, and North Greenville actually has another match beforehand, so if they play their cards right, this could be a first-place battle. Now, I understand that a few of these teams haven't really played the equal amount of games, but it's always good to get some of these other conferences some love. So, for the Conference of Carolinas, I really think that this is going to be a matchup to watch for. And honestly, I don't like just picking MPSF, Big West Conference, EIVA, MIVA. I want to give all the other conferences some love, just because we're getting down to the nitty-gritty of all of conference play, and we're getting down to the last few weeks of regular season conference play, and I want to give all these other conferences some love. Now, that being said, Erskine and North Greenville, it's going to be a great matchup just because both these teams are the top 2 teams in the conference for the time being, and you never know which which matchup could come back to haunt these teams come conference play. So we'll see what happens when it comes to Erskine and North Greenville, but I like this matchup, and North Greenville, you gotta like their story. Remember, this was the team that won the NCAA tournament match against Princeton last season, and we'll see what happens with North Greenville. If they can win against Erskine, they'll stay ahead of Erskine. But if Erskine wins, then I imagine Erskine will overtake North Greenville. Again, it's a numbers game, considering they haven't played the equal amount of conference games. But we'll see what happens when it comes to these two teams in the Conference of Carolinas. So that's that for all of the notable matches to watch for. Then the under-the-radar matches to watch for, we have on Thursday and on Saturday. We have Lewis taking on Ohio State on Thursday, number 13 Ohio State, as Lewis lost the first meeting in 3 sets. And then on Saturday, they play Ball State. Both these matchups are at Lewis in Romeoville, as Lewis won the first meeting against Ball State in straight sets. So for Ball State and for Ohio State, they actually could lock up the number 2 and number 3 seed in the MIVA tournament if both teams go 2-0 this week, and if Lindenwood goes 0-2, as Lindenwood plays Loyola and Purdue Fort Wayne on Friday and Saturday, respectively. So for Ball State and Ohio State, they play McKendree as well, which, no offense to McKendree, I don't think they're going to have too much trouble against McKendree. McKendree's kind of the second-to-last team in the MIVA. And that's no offense to McKendree, but it's like they're kind of the doormat of the conference. So for Ohio State and Ball State, it's pretty much simple. As long as you win, you're nearing the number 2 and number 3 seed. Whereas for Lindenwood, you want to win as much as you can. And for Loyola, it's going to be tough to beat Loyola. But you could catch them on a bad night just because they haven't been as consistent as they have been in weeks past. Now, for Purdue Fort Wayne, that's kind of a whole other story. They've been battle-tested, and they were one of the few teams that have beaten Loyola, but it's like, I don't know, it's like, that's kind of a 50-50 matchup. Purdue Fort Wayne is much better than what their conference record indicates. So you'll have to wait and see what Lindenwood and Purdue Fort Wayne has to offer. But I can assure you that I don't think Lindenwood is going to have a great matchup against Loyola. But Lindenwood is kind of underrated. I wouldn't say they're bad, but they're probably their best chance of making noise is probably the MIVA tournament. But again, your best bets at winning, the favorites of winning the tournament is probably Loyola and maybe Ohio State. Like, if I was a betting man, I'd probably say Loyola's the favorite to win the MIVA tournament, but you also can't count out Ohio State, and then Ball State, I think, can maybe play some good volleyball down the stretch. I mean, look at what they did last week. And also got to give a shout out to Caleb Jennis as he surpassed 1,000 kills, which is pretty darn impressive for him. But back to MIVA action. You want to avoid Loyola at all costs. Just like how teams should avoid UCLA at all costs, no one wants to play Loyola in the MIVA tournament. I mean, Purdue Fort Wayne did show to everybody that Loyola is beatable, but it's like, they were battle-tested against some of the better teams in the nation. I don't know if everyone else will get that once in a blue moon lifetime. But what this does mean is that maybe Ohio State and Ball State can possibly beat Loyola. But we'll see what happens. I mean, Loyola plays Ball State and Ohio State on the last week of the regular season. But that's looking a little too far away. That's next week, which is the last week of the MIVA. And then Loyola can clinch a share of the MIVA title if they win out this week, and I guess they can clinch the outright conference title with a win and with the Ohio State and Ball State loss. So there's that right there. But for right now, expect Loyola to win, and also expect Ohio State and Ball State to win. But you never know with the MIVA. Like, these Midwestern teams are scrappy as heck, so we'll see. But that's pretty much that for your matchups to watch for in week number 13. So I'm not sure if I pre-recorded my matches to watch for. I'll have to listen back if I messed up on the BYU USC match. We'll see if I'll just if I'll just drop it tomorrow. And I mean, I'll go back and listen to it, but if I listen back to it and I see that I said that USC and BYU play on Friday and on Saturday, I'll probably just cut that part out. So we'll see. Anyway, that's pretty much that for all the NCAA men's volleyball matchups to watch for in week number 13. So jumping on over to some NCAA beach volleyball. So the NCAA beach volleyball, or the NCAA website, hasn't really been updating a whole lot, and it's making me mad. But I did find out that Coastal Carolina did pull off an upset, which is quite impressive. Before I get into that matchup, I do need to go over the top 15 top 20 of the AVCA coaches poll, which does come out every Tuesday, which is kind of inconvenient for me, which does not make me happy, just because Set Point goes live every Monday, which might change. Anyway, so your AVCA top 20 coaches poll. So 20 through 16 consist of Tulane at 20, Arizona at 19, Pepperdine at 18, Stetson at 17, and South Carolina at 16. 15 through 11 consist of FIU at 15, FAU at 14, Washington at 13, Long Beach State at 12, and Georgia State at 11. 10 through 6 consist of Stanford at 10, Cal at 9, Hawaii at 8, LMU at 7, and GCU at 6. 5 through 1 consists of LSU at 5, Florida State at 4, UCLA at 3, USC at 2, and your still number 1 team in the AVCA Beach Volleyball Coaches Poll is TCU. So nothing really ultimately changed all that much. I mean, LMU, you saw what happened to them. They lost to South Carolina the previous week, which was, I'm still boggled by that. I'm sorry, but I just am. So that's pretty much that for the AVCA Women's Beach Volleyball Coaches Poll. So now over to the FAU Coastal Carolina upset. So Coastal Carolina beat FAU 3-2 on Friday. So I was boggled by this. I was like, whoa. So, yeah, I was very baffled by this upset. And that was kind of the only big-time upset we had, unless I missed something. So, unfortunately, I couldn't really find too many big-time upsets. To my understanding, from what I've been seeing, as honestly, it was pretty quiet. I do kind of got to feel bad for, and I hate to say this, but I kind of got to feel bad for Long Beach State, as they had a good chance at beating Hawaii. It's just that at the beginning of the match, they were playing in the Big West Challenge, and it was the final match of the Big West Challenge, them versus Hawaii, and one of their pairs got injured, and they had to forfeit that match just because, well, when your pair gets injured, if they're unable to continue, then you got to forfeit. So they had to forfeit that match. So they're already down 0-1, and they eventually lost the duel 2-3. So I hate to say this about Long Beach State Beach Volleyball, but it's like death taxes and still not being able to beat Hawaii. And that's no knock on Long Beach State Beach Volleyball, but it's like they just can't seem to beat Hawaii. And that's kind of the only thing that's keeping them from winning the Big West Conference. And I know Hawaii is really good, but it's like, that's kind of the only obstacle that has been in their way. And this seems to kind of be the unfortunate season for Long Beach State, because they've been so close to pulling off big-time wins. Like, they almost beat USC, it's just that they fell in the in the third set, and then they lost in the third and deciding set against Pepperdine, and they lost in one of the third and deciding sets in another match. I think it was against Cal, and they've just had a slew of bad luck in certain other matches. So it's like, they're probably one of the more snake-bitten teams I've seen in a while. So it's been bad luck for Long Beach State beach volleyball, to say the least. But for them to be number 12 is still quite impressive, if you ask me. And their good fortune will come. They just have to be patient, and they just have to, roll with the punches. I know they've got a home matchup against Stanford, and maybe, hence the word maybe, I might attend. I mean, I've never really attended a beach volleyball duel before in college, but it's like, maybe that'll change. Speaking of Stanford volleyball, I do want to give a big shout out to Charlie Ekstrom of Stanford volleyball, as she is now the all-time individual win leader for the Cardinal, as she has 68 wins, which is the most at Stanford, and she's got plenty more where that came from. So congratulations to Charlie Ekstrom, which is outstanding. So that is pretty much that for NCAA Beach Volleyball. Oh, one more thing. One big-time matchup that did happen was Florida State edged LSU 3-2. They actually had to play the match earlier than expected. They had to play the match at 8 a.m. Central Time just because of the bad weather. Or, actually, no, it was like at 11 a.m. Central Time, 9 a.m. Central Time, just because of the bad weather in Louisiana. But overall, Florida State narrowly escaped with the win over LSU. But LSU, they're getting better. So overall, for the Noles, they're proving why they're the number 4 team in the nation. So I'm sure we're going to get some big time matchups. And USC had the week off, but we're going to be seeing the Trojans back sooner rather than later. And then soon we're going to see TCU's schedule be picking up soon. And I want to say they've got, a second. Sorry about that. I want to say TCU's got a big-time matchup this week. They've got Pepperdine on Friday, and then they've got Stetson, and yeah, they don't have any big-time matchups this week. I mean, Pepperdine and Stetson are 2 ranked matchups, but it's like, that's not really all that big. And the only other big-time matchup that TCU has is probably on April 14th when they play UCLA. And then they've got Pepperdine the day after. I can't wait to see that UCLA matchup. And who knows if TCU will stay undefeated by the time they play UCLA. Cal Poly could also be a big-time matchup, but it's like, I don't know. We'll see. But other than that, I think TCU has the possibility of going undefeated in the regular season, or at least up until the 2CSA championships. But we'll see what happens with TCU. TCU is looking really good this year. This could be the year they win it all. Not trying to jinx them or anything, but they are just looking fantastic, dude. But we'll see. Florida State, they always come up big in the CCSA championships. But we'll see what happens. They've won it for the past 7 years, so we'll see if the Horned Frogs can dethrone the Noles. Alright, but that's that for some NCAA Beach Volleyball. I know it wasn't as lengthy as before, but we'll see. But what can you do? So, I'll just dive right into this brief little NCAA Beach Volleyball or NCAA Women's Volleyball transfer. So Emma Monks, a former Michigan State middle blocker, she actually signed with Pitt as she narrowly was third in blocks for the Spartans, as she had 72, and she had 133 kills for the Spartans, and she hit 354 for Michigan State. So that's pretty good. And Pitt needs all the players they can get. And who knows, maybe she could play right side as well. But for the time being, they're going to have her play middle blocker. And she is a grad transfer from Michigan State. And they also got a libero/defensive specialist from Virginia Tech, as she had over 1,300 digs. I don't know her entire stats altogether, but I can confirm that she had over 1,300 digs. So there's that right there for Pitt and their transfers. Now let's jump on in to some pro beach volleyball. So Sara Hughes and Kelly Cheng actually won the Elite 16 in Tepic. So I actually don't know. I actually did not get a press release released on this. There was no press release released on this, which makes me very mad. I actually did not get to see... Oh, there is a press release on this. Oops. So they just released a press release on this, which really makes me frustrated on this. Oh, they don't even have a press... Okay, so Team USA did release a press release on this, but they don't have all the matches that they played. Well, that sucks. So they just won the final. They just posted the final. Thanks, Team USA. Anyway, so Sara Hughes and Kelly Cheng won the final against a pair from Brazil, as they defeated Eduarda Duda Lisboa and Ana Patricia Ramos in the final 21-14, 15-21, and 15-10. And they actually did not lose a set until the final. I just wish that USA could have posted the remainder of the other matches. Ahem! Anyway, so this tournament was actually very special for Sara Hughes, as she and Cheng actually won on the day of her grandmother's birthday, or her late grandmother's birthday, and her grandmother was her #1 supporter, so it was very special for Sara Hughes, as, once again, her grandmother passed away, so I'm glad that Sara Hughes and Kelly Cheng won on Sara Hughes' grandmother's birthday, so congratulations to the former USC duo on winning the Elite 16 tournament in Tepic, and I'm happy for Sara Hughes to win on her grandmother's birthday. And the fact that Sara Hughes and Kelly Cheng won this tournament after they finished 5th last week in La Paz speaks to high volumes of how this team bounced back from a not-so-good show. Okay, I wouldn't say a not-so-good showing, but a meh showing. I mean, obviously they know that they're better than they were last week. They know they're better than 5th place. Like, they probably could have finished in the top 4, but unfortunately things happen. So, good job to Sara Hughes and Kelly Cheng for bouncing back from last week's 5th place showing and winning the Elite 16 tournament in Tepic. And for Sara Hughes, it's obviously amazing for her to win the Elite 16 tournament on her grandmother's birthday, as her grandmother was her #1 supporter, and for her to win that tournament on her grandmother's birthday is something special. So I don't know when the two are slated to play next in terms of their tournaments, whether it's via the AVP or whether it's their next tournament, but honestly, they're back. I'm sure they will. And I guess Kristen Nuss and Taryn Cloth tied for 13th, and then Megan Kraft and Emily Stockman tied for 17th, and Haley Harward and Kelly Klinsky tied for 21st on the women's side. And then the next Elite 16 event will be on April 26th through the 30th in Uberlândia in Brazil. If I mispronounced that, I am sorry. And then on the men's side, Trevor Crabb and Theo Brunner and Tri Bourne and Kame Schulk tied for 13th when it came to the U.S. All right, so that is that for the pro side of things when it comes to the U.S. So before we head on out, there is no NBA news, unfortunately, but there is one more thing I do need to add. That also, okay, I'll save that for the end of the show. But the AVCA actually made the announcement, I want to say on Thursday, if not Friday, that they actually named Dr. Jaime Gordon their new executive director following the soon-to-be departure of Kathy DeBoer. So Gordon was actually the athletic director and coach for Morehead State for the past 20 years for their women's volleyball team. And he actually became the all-time winningest coach at the school as well. And he was also the first Division I coach in the region to convince his president to add a women's beach volleyball team. So I think that's incredible that they find. Well, it's good that they actually named the executive in terms of the following of the soon-to-be departure of Kathy DeBoer. And here are some coaches that sounded off on Twitter, starting off with the Michigan State women's volleyball coach, Leah Johnson. Great leader and great person, great pick AVCA at AVCA Volleyball. And then we'll start off, then going down the line, we'll go with Utah's coach, Beth Lanier. She says, I couldn't be more pleased with the hiring of Jaime Gordon as executive director of the AVCA Volleyball. He's a passionate leader and has been instrumental in building volleyball attendance across the country. He is the right person to follow the legacy left by Kathy DeBoer. Then Michigan's coach, Erin Vertu, she says only 2 words. Slam dunk. Best one best one of the bunch. Then Creighton's head coach, Kirsten Booth, she says, big shoes to fill with the retirement of Kathy DeBoer, but if anyone could fill them, it is Jaime Gordon. Really excited about the future of the AVCA and the continued growth of our sport with Jaime at the helm. Then Iowa State's head coach, Christy Johnson, said, it's almost impossible to find someone as great as Kathy DeBoer to lead our association, but they found an amazing successor in Dr. Jaime Gordon, one of the best and will be an awesome advocate. And then Virginia women's volleyball coach Shannon Wells, big shoes to fill, and no doubt they got this one right. Congrats, Jaime. Excited to see where our sport goes under your leadership. And then Vanderbilt head coach Anders Nelson says, great news for volleyball. Congrats, Dr. Jaime Gordon, or congrats at MSU Eagles AD, which is probably Dr. Jaime Gordon. And then Tim O'Brien, the MIVA head honcho or the MIVA director, says, 1, congrats to Jaime Gordon, wishing great success in the new role. 2, no comments included from NCAA men's volleyball coaches. I'll get into that a little bit later. He says, I know men's volleyball head coaches to be very responsive. I hope they were thought of in the process. I hope they continue to be thought of as the AVCA progresses. Okay, well, first of all, I'm very sad that they were not included in this. Well, that's heartbreaking if you ask me. So, that's very sad if you ask me. And Tim makes a good point. It's like, why didn't any NCAA men's volleyball coaches get involved in this? That's very disappointing. So Tim actually makes a good point about this. Where are all the NCAA men's volleyball coaches in this? Where's Charlie Wade or John Speraw or Alan Knipe or Mark Pavlik in this? I'm just saying, maybe they didn't get back to the person that put out the press release, but it's like, yuck. Anyway, so from the quotes, we actually have 2, and I actually did not I didn't slap one from Kevin Hamley, and that's actually my bad. So So we'll start off with the first one being from Mary Wise, as we're almost 100 minutes in. I'll just do the two, and I'm sorry for not including Kevin Hambley. This one comes from Mary Wise. She says, the AVCA is so fortunate to have the baton passed from one outstanding leader to the next. At a time when our sport is seeing unprecedented growth and the challenges that come with it, we can't ask for a better person than Jaime Gordon to lead us forward. Okay, so I did get the Kevin Hambley quote. So Kevin Hambley says, Kathy DeBoer leaves enormous shoes to fill with her departure from the AVCA. However, Jaime is a fantastic choice to be the next executive director of the AVCA and has the qualities and integrity to lead the association. He has been a leader already within the AVCA for many years. Few have the experience that he has as far as being a volleyball coach and administrator. The AVCA board and the membership are lucky to have him take the helm. And then the last one comes from Jarrett Elliott, University of Texas women's volleyball coach. So the first one was Mary Wise, the University of Florida women's volleyball coach. Second one was Kevin Hambley, the Stanford women's volleyball coach. And then this one comes from Jarrett Elliott, the Texas women's volleyball coach. He says, the AVCA has been the leader for the growth of our sport. We are all grateful for the endless commitment and passion for Kathy DeBoer's Kathy DeBoer has poured into volleyball and the association. It looks like there was like a misquote there, but I digress. Jaime Gordon has the knowledge, passion, and trust to succeed her. He also has a unique skill set to communicate and motivate at a high level. He has had to manage head coaches as an athletic director and understands the needs of athletes as an elite coach. Lastly, Jaime understands that volleyball has huge momentum behind it and desires to push the envelope to grow the game to a level we have never seen in this country. I'm sure I speak on behalf of all the coaches. Thank you, AVCA, for bringing in the next great leader for this sport. Okay, so I'm sorry if I butchered the quotes, but it's like I literally just copy and pasted this Jarrett Elliott quote, so I don't know if someone messed up on the quote, but it's like, sorry. Okay, but that is pretty much that for that, and honestly, I think this is a great hire. If he really does have the qualities of being a great executive, in terms of like being a great head coach, and being a great athletic director, boom. This is the best thing that the AVCA could have done in terms of hiring their new executive director. Perfect. Bullseye, spot on, you did it. Great hire, AVCA. Kathy DeBoer is set to step down on June 30th, and when that happens, that is when Jaime Gordon will take the helm. Alright, so that is that for that bit of news. Before we get on out of here, one more thing I do got to add is that next week is NVA week. Because next Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is the first event for the NVA. So y'all better be prepared for anything NVA related. So there might not be a whole lot of NCAA men's volleyball. There might just be some NVA. So hopefully I'll try to get some NCAA beach volleyball in. I'll try not to leave all the NCAA men's volleyball out, but it might be more NVA heavy. We'll see. But on that note, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. It is that time, ladies and gentlemen, that I drop the beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I appreciate you. Shout out to the live chat, Larry B., as well as Arthur Parsons, and also shout out to paybacks that listen. I appreciate you for listening live. Keep a sharp eye out for a possible guest. And thank you to Larry B. for saying such a good show. I appreciate you, my brother. We might be on a different time next week. It all depends on if we get a guest. It all depends. But keep a sharp lookout for any possible guests. I haven't confirmed it yet, but we shall see. For everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have yourself a great rest of the week. I will see you Friday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Be safe. Remember, it's flu season, so take care of your bodies. And I will see you Friday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Peace!